care given is care given only for the patients who are having physical pain? I would like to have an interactive session, so you can share your opinions, whether it's right or wrong, in chat, either through unmuting. Okay, I think I will repeat that question again. Is care needed only for the patients who are having physical pain?
Please respond.
Okay, I got an answer no from Ashwati. Okay. So yes, so it is a no from few of them. Same as they said, it's not like pain is only for the physical illness. There are some other pains which cannot be evaluated or which cannot be understood through the visual approach from the patient. So rather than that, there are some other pains which we need to focus more on. And today we are going to discuss about the other pains, dealing other pains, and what are the assessments that can be done for understanding or evaluating those other pains. So yes, first slide regarding the definition of palliative care. It's an approach that improves the quality of life of patients and their families facing problems associated with life-threatening illness through the prevention and relief of suffering by means of early identification and impeccable assessment and treatment of pain and other problems, physical, psychosocial, and spiritual. So these three terms, physical, psychosocial, and spiritual, this is what we are going to deal with, and how to understand the physical pain, the psychosocial pain, and the spiritual pain. So, why is psychosocial care important in palliative care? Can you give me some few answers? Is psychosocial support needed in palliative care? Yes. Okay. Why? Why it is needed for the patients? Okay. So, living with this threatening illness or this life threatening incidents or accidents, obviously they will be having some sort of stresses and challenges, which will cause the psychological pain and social pain of family. So we need to understand those factors through which the patient is having or through which the patient is suffering. For that, a psychosocial assessment or psychosocial care should be provided. Living with lifetime or life threatening illness or the awareness of approaching death causes unique stresses and challenges. Understanding these factors related to a patient's quality of life is essential in providing appropriate care. So, for this, we need to take an assessment or called social diagnosis. An understanding of psychological, biological, social, and environmental factors operating on the person in his situation. A serious illness disrupts individuals' thoughts and feelings, relationships, social and spiritual supports, financial stability, and spirituality. So, about the pain, as we said in the starting of the session, it's not only the physical pain which we are coming or we are dealing with, rather than that, the psychological, social, and spiritual pain. So, these all four together comes the total pain. Next. These are the 4 parameters which gives or which increases the pain of a palliative patient. So for assessing these 4 parameters, we should have an aim. How we should or where we should focus on these particular pain areas. For that, we should need a proper guidance or a skill to know and to understand, thereby giving the proper intervention. So the aim of the assessment will be identifying what the area is, what the problem area is, whether the patient is having any psychological distress or the patient is suffering from any social trauma or the patient is having any economical problems. So by understanding this or the understanding the problem area, we will set the goals or aims of assessment. And thereafter, we will properly put a guidance or properly put resources or the skills which should be needed for interviewing these areas or these goals of assessment. So the aim of the assessment is to identify the problem areas which result from illness and may influence the well-being of patient and their families. And for that, the assessment involves collecting information, identify and honoring strength, resources, and needs. Then, talking about the assessment, it is not a one-time process. Through one single assessment, we cannot deal or control all the pains in the sense the psychosocial, spiritual pains of the patient. So for that, we have to go on an ongoing process, which includes interviewing the patient in between the intervention part, also in between the goal approaching part. So with a single assessment, we cannot get the whole details of the patient or we cannot change the patient's pain. The selection of goals and intervention depends largely on what is being assessed. So as I said, on the aim of assessments, we need to correctly identify which area the patient is having the problem and thereby preparing a proper intervention plan for it. The psychosocial needs of patients and families or the caregivers often change over the course of time. For example, if a cancer patient is having the pain, the 50 percentage of maybe a pain, the rather 50 percentage will be how the patient is going to convey this pain to the family members, how the family members will adjust to the current condition of the cancer patient, or the how they will again, if it is a breadwinner of the family, how they will manage the other economic thing, other financial thing, how they will run the family. So based on that, based on the patient's need and based on the family's need, we may have to take the proper assessment, and it may not be in a single process, it will be an ongoing process, and thereon we prepare a proper intervention plan for it. So yes, here are the some sources of information. To collect the proper assessment details or to collect the proper information, we need to have a proper channeling person or the proper informant. First one is patient or caregiver. Most of us think that this from the patient we get the whole information, but rather than that, the majority of the information is collected from the caregiver because the caregiver can explain us in detail the condition of the family. Maybe the patient will be thinking about from his own perception, while the caregiver can be thinking in the dual perceptions, seen from the patient's view as from the family view. So a majority of information regarding the psychosocial impacts can be achieved from the caregiver. Second one is the collateral sources. These collateral sources includes friends, relatives, and neighbors. Third one is home visit. Home visit is something which we went during which we used to provide as a service for the patients. And during the home care, we go for home visit, thereby collect the information from the home visit. Along with this, I can also add a large amount of information can be collected from the community if we are having a proper social support. Through the social support, a large amount of information from the society can be achieved. By that, we can help the patients to connect easily with the society too. The areas of assessment. So these are the few listed areas where we can properly do some assessment. And this includes patient and family overview, insight, family structure and dynamics, socioeconomic status, environmental assessment, psychological distress, spiritual impact of illness, interventions, and plans. So patient and family overview. So these are the basic details which we use to investigate during the initial registration part. So here comes the basic demographic details where we collect the name, address, age, uh, what are the things, what are the presently complaints which the patient is having during that particular moment, and occupations, what he is having, the primary caregiver, who is the breadwinner, and what is the relation between the caregiver and the patients, etc. Next comes the insight. In insight, we look the diagnosis, prognosis, and palliative care of both patient and family. There are some cases where the patient doesn't know about their diagnosis and prognosis. So on that time, we will check up with the caregiver. And there are some times where the caregiver, especially the primary caregiver, maybe the spouse or the children may not be knowing their patient's diagnosis and prognosis. So based on that, we will collect the insight of both patient as well as the family members. Then comes the family structure or the dynamics. So in this family structure, we have genogram, family dynamics, and the history of the illness. So this can be explained in the next slide. Yes, genogram. Genogram or family tree. This is introduced by Murray Bowen. It's a graphical representation to denote the whole history or the dynamics of the family. Uh, in sense, by looking at this graphical representation, we can understand the exact condition of the family, how the family is running, or the patient's financial as well as family situation, and also the relationship between the patient as well as the family with their children, etc. So, at the first glance in this genogram, we can get a detailed understanding about the situation of the family. So, here we will explain about the structure, about the dynamics, about the strength, and about the resources of the family. For that, we have to have some symbolic representations for that. And in that, we will explain the name, age, education, occupational profile, and the emotional relationship. So these are the symbols in which we explain the genogram of a family. The square one is the square in the first one is a male. The circle one is a female. Square and circle. In between there is a straight line, which denotes that the male and the female is married. And in the third one, there is a separation with a single bar line, which explains that the husband and the wife is got separated. And in the third one, there is a double bar, double line, where it denotes that the the husband and the spouse got divorced. And towards the right in the box, you can see the children, like whether it's a twins or the wife is pregnant or it's an adopted child or a foster child or if the person is still in birth or abortion, etc. So this explains the relationship that the family is having between each other. The first one explains that the family is having a normal relationship and it's denoted with the square and a circle for husband and wife. In between there is a straight line, and the dotted line explains that there is a relationship and it's not that much intimate or that much low. The third one is a double line, which indicates that they are having a strong intimacy between them. And the strained lines, which explains that it's some kind of hostility in the relationship. And the last one, there is a violence in the relationship. The emotional abuse is also can be explained with the strained line. The sexual abuse can be denoted with two strained lines. And in the third one, a dotted line with an arrow towards the wife denotes that the husband is having a strained relationship to the wife. So this is a small graphical representation of a family. If possible, can you please explain this in the chat box?
Nurses, please respond. Please put your answers in the chat box. She is waiting for your answers. Neeraja, can you repeat the question?
Okay, this is a graphical representation of a small family genogram. You can explain like the members with the square and the circle, what sort of relationship they are having, who is the patient, who are the children. Okay.
Anybody? So she has explained very well about family tree. So that is why she is asking for you. Just explain whatever you can. Uh, I think you can continue.
Okay.
Nobody knows this.
Okay. So here, Sindhu, as you can see, some black cross lines are there. 40 years. So she's a patient. She has her first marriage with Raju, who's a coolie worker. And in their relationship, they had a child, Sharan. He's a boy, 16 years old, and he's studying 11th standard. So since he has passed away, she had went to second marriage, and that is with Shaji, who's 45 years, and they are having two twin children. One is Amal and second is Vimal. Both are studying in 8th standard. So here, Shaji's family, parents Kumaran and Leela, they had passed away, and Sindhu's parents Mohan and Leela. Mohan has passed away, and Leela, 60 years, is a homemaker. So this is the graphical representation of a patient named Sindhu. So this explains who are the family members there and the children in which standard they are studying, like, regarding their occupation, what they're doing, and the relationship, like what sort of relationship Sindhu is having with their family members. So likewise, we can explain every patient's genogram, I mean, family tree or the relationship or the members. With a single glance itself, we can understand who all are there, or in detail, we can get the dynamic of the family through genogram. So this is a complex one. Here we have added the emotional relationship also. The first one was the initial genogram which we used to take in the initial investigation, while this is something which includes all the emotional dynamics of the patient with the other family members. So here we can see that Sindhu is So here we can see that Sindhu is having a good relationship with Sharat, who is her elder son, and with Indira, who is her brother, and with Bindu, who is her sister. In the Her husband Shaji is having a strained relationship with Sharat, who's Sindhu's first child, and Shaji is also having a strained relationship with Subhash and Keena, who's his brother and brother's wife. The Amal and Vimal, twin children of Sharat and Shaji. With them, the Shaji is having a good normal relationship. So in this, we can see the emotional dynamics of the family and how they are connected emotionally. So this is the symbolic or graphical representation of a family. Echo map. So before we have seen the relationship of a family, while in echo map we can see the relationship of the patient and family with the society. Here the societal elements comes into and the relationship factors among them and with the society can be explained. So this is introduced by Anne Hartzman, and this is the pictorial representation of patient's family in a social environmental, that is the relationship with their larger society. A snapshot view of important interactions of patients' family with each other, as well as with the group, with the extended families, with other individuals, with other organizations and associations. So yes, before going to the diagram, there is a small box on the right side. The straight line denotes the positive relationship. The strained line denotes the tenors, and the stressful. The arrows explains the energy flow, and the line thickness explains the intensity. So a family unit can be connected with the health service, that is the PHC and all, the neighbors, the workplace, the government sectors or the government services, the community services, the religious institution, with the peer groups of friends, with other clubs, with schools, with volunteers. So with all these sectors, a patient and the family can be connected, and these all can be explained through an echo map. So here comes other graphical representation. And in middle, the circle one, it's a family, husband and wife. Wife is a patient. They are having two children, the elder one son and the younger one daughter. So the relationship between other social factors have been explained. So many social factors have involved with the family. Top, it's a church, and that shows a strong relationship between both of them. Like the family is having a strong relationship with the church as well as the church is having with the family, and the intensity can be visible. It's visible through the thickness of the line. So the next comes the panchayat member. So the family is getting a strained approach from the panchayat member. That's why it's denoted with the dotted lines, and it's from the panchayat member towards the family. It's getting with the arrow. We can understand the energy flow. So from the neighbors, they are getting a bad impact. It's a bad relationship. That's why it's an curved line, and it's from the neighbors to the family. Can be understood by the arrow, that is the energy flow. Next come the volunteer. So from the volunteers, they are having a normal relationship, and from the youth organization, it's a thickened line, hence it can be a positive relationship, and that is there between the family as well as the organization. So the both are having a good relationship. So from the school, they are having a normal support to the child, the younger one, and from the friends also, the child, the younger daughter is getting a positive approach, and that is there between them both. So the elder one is also having friends group, peer group, and it is a normal relationship, and that is present between both of them. And from the college, the elder son is getting a very intimate relationship, which is denoted with a thickened line, and that is present between both of them. So the next comes the public health center. So from there, they are getting a strained line and is going towards the patient, the spouse. It is from the public health center, yes. And from the colleagues, the breadwinner or the husband is getting a normal relationship and is present between both of them. Then from self-help groups, they are getting a support for the patient of the family. So this is the graphical representation or the echo map, which explains the support which the family is getting from the society. Yes, caregiver. So before going to the caregiver, I would like to ask, are we a caregiver or not? Can you explain yourself as a caregiver? Each one of them in the session. Are you a caregiver?
चेक करवा के देना पड़ेगा, गड़बड़ लिखा होगा मेरा पावर।
Yes. So isn't it we are a caregiver? Okay. So some yes are there. Okay. I think by reading this quote, few of them can maybe will be able to relate is we are caregiver or not. So there are only four kinds of peoples in the world. One, who have been caregivers. Two, who are currently caregivers. Three, who will be caregivers. And four, who will need a caregivers. So I think in some point we will become a caregiver for someone else. So we should have the respect to all the caregivers whom we are seeing. As the importance we give for the patient, that much of importance should be given to the caregivers too. In palliative care, we will not call anyone as bystander. We will call them as caregivers only because we should have the respect for them. So respect those individuals, acknowledge them, have or give importance for the caregivers as we have given for the patients. Socioeconomic. Yes. Someone responded something.
No, I think you can continue. Sangeet, please mute others.
So socioeconomic status. So these are the basic things which we use to investigate when a patient comes to us. So in the socioeconomic status part, we just check whether the patient is having adequate food, clothing, and shelter. Is there a breadwinner in the family, or who controls the financial part of the family? From where does they get the source of income? Is there any debt for the family, or they are getting any support from the society, which includes the PHC or the panchayat or from other schemes, or they're getting any revenue or fund from, or any kind like pension from social government schemes or from local financial support, and how the education of the children are going. So these are some of the basic socio-economic status which we used to collect on the initial investigation part. Environmental assessment. So in this environmental assessment, we just check like what sort of house the patient is having. That I mean the type of house, whether they are living in the own house or in a rented house, or their house is under any construction or any kind of modification part, etc. Position of patient in the house, whether it's the patient is living in a crowded area or in a crowded family, and any kind of ventilation or light is available for the patient, etc. The kitchen, is it any open food storage, or the patient is having any kind of, is the patient is receiving proper food, proper water supply, or is there any proper water supply to the family? The accessibility towards the patients, is transportation is available or not, or the patient is getting accessible to other medicines or a nearby pharmacy, nearby groceries, etc. Psychological distress, is the patient is undergoing any kind of psychological distress, is the patient is having any psychological illness, or after the diagnosis or after getting into the palliative treatment or any kind of treatment, the patient is facing any kind of emotional distress, or the patient is having any anxiety or fear regarding their patient's physical well-being or patient's family well-being or the economical well-being. So all these kind of psychological distress is the patient is having or not. The patient is having any grief regarding the illness, or is in some way, in which way he is coping with all these distress and all, whether he's coping in a very good manner or he's choosing the wrong method for the coping mechanisms, like going to an alcohol part or smoking part. So like that kind of assessments will be taken regarding the, or based on the psychological distress areas. Let's come to the spiritual part. Like the patient is having any existencing feel, or the patient is getting into a feel where why did God give this curse to me, or why am I going through this kind of phase of my life. So when a patient comes under these areas, we do the spiritual assessment, and where we look upon the connection, the strengths and comfort, whether the patient is having any hope or any concerns, is he's in a meaningful way, or is he is thinking in a meaningful way, is he is getting any joyfulness in his life, like that. So the spiritual assessment, these are the areas which we look upon. As I said, the connection, meaning and joy, strength and comfort, hope and concerns. So in connection, who are the persons or communities which the patient is looking up to for the support? What role do they have in the patient's well-being? Do they have any image of power generation or power creating, which is greater than himself or herself? Whether he's having any life situation which affecting his very badly his feelings about himself, about his fate or his relationship. So like that wise, we will check upon the connections, and regarding meaning and joy, what has been most important in his life, is what is in what how he values his life, or what meaning does he describe for his life. So we will check with him, and what are the most what he is most thankful for, and to whom he is thankful for, what makes him more happy, and what does he feel the proudest in his lifetime. Also regarding strength and comfort, is there anything which helps him in comforting? What helped him to get through the difficult times during the past? Or what is his source of strength which he is have at that present moment? Regarding the hope and concerns, is there is any hope which he is feeling inside or which he is seeking for? And is there anything that feels him unfinished? So based on all these assessments, we will go to the interventions part. Either we provide information for the patient as well as for the family, or we will psycho-educate them. We will give supportive counseling for the patient as well as for the family. We will keep on follow-upping because assessment is not a one-time single process, it's an ongoing process. So hence through continuous follow-up, we will check whether the intervention is getting benefited for the patient as well as for the family. And if not, we will go for a rechange in plan and thereby we will go to the next intervention side of the goals. Then bereavement support. The bereavement support is given for the families where the patient has passed away. So after that also we will go approach the family whether they are having, whether they are going through a tough phase or not, whether they are psychologically okay, whether they are socially getting support from the neighbors or from the other society, or they are having the economic support, or they are getting any financial aids. If not, how can we provide them? So that kind of support is given to the family, which is called as bereavement support. And rehabilitation, if a patient needs a proper guidance, and for that if he needed a rehabilitation, we will go on that. We will go through the patient's details, like we will assess and understand the aims that should be needed, or which should be where that intervention should be given on. Later on we will have a proper plan, thereby provide him with the proper rehabilitation process. Then facilitation, if the patient or the patient families needed a proper facilitation. For example, if the patient want to apply for some kind of pension, or the patient's family, like I said in the bereavement support, if the breadwinner of the family has passed away and the spouse need a widow pension, then we will facilitate them, like how they should get the pension, or in which manner they have to process with. Then the liaison. So through all these ways, we will plan the intervention. We will go with the assessments by identifying the problem area. Then after doing the proper scaling, or after using the proper tools, uh, we will we'll take a detailed assessment and later on plan accordingly. So the assessing psychosocial and spiritual suffering. So the two skills or the two important mandatory things which needed for assessing a psychosocial as well as spiritual is a purposeful observation and purposeful conversation. Only through purposeful observation we can get a correct exact areas, problem areas. And after identifying these problem areas only, we can plan the intervention accordingly. So for all these things, we need a purposeful observation and conversation or communication with the patient as well as the family. Assessment. So as I said, it's not a single process, it's an ongoing process. And in that ongoing process, if there is any mistakes or any incompletion happens, then obviously we will get an inappropriate goals. So recheck, rechange with the assessment, follow, take on follow-ups, or give on checking with the updates of the family as well as the beneficiary. Is they are going or getting benefited with the interventions that we are providing. So this is a case study. This is a case study of a patient who has been diagnosed with CA breast. So I will read the case study, and just please let me know what all interventions, physical, psychological, social, and spiritual assessment can be given to the patient and the family. You can put the answers on the chat box. So this is a case study of a 56-year-old lady, Mrs. A, who has been diagnosed with CA breast in 2016. She has undergone mastectomy and referred for pain management. She looks very anxious and had no idea about palliative care. Along with that, the patient is having some comorbidities, which include diabetics since 12 years, coronary artery disease, fracture on leg due to fall in 2019. Also, she's a widow and her children are having a hostile relationship with her. She lives alone in a rented house. So this is a simple picture which gives details about the patient. You can go across this and let me know what all interventions can be given for the regarding the four parameters, that is physical, psychological, social, and spiritual. You can put your answers in the chat box. So first and foremost, what all physical pain or physical distress will this patient will be having? Because we can discuss on that parameter. So what all things, what all pain, physical pain will this patient have or have undergone? Surgical pain, okay. Radical pain because of TM. Body image disturbance. Okay, yes, the patient was having a fracture on the left leg. So because of that, the patient will be having a pain in his leg too. Emotional pain for living alone, yes. So coming on the psychological part, as Hema said, there will be an emotional pain because the patient is living alone. Okay, physical pain. Okay, as discussed, the patient will be having body pain because she has already referred for pain management, and also the fracture on the leg also will increase her pain. Along with that, we can also say that the patient will be having some kind of lack of sleep because all these pain will not make her give her a good sleep. So that is the physical pain part, and comes on the psychological part. So what are the psychological distress that the this patient will be having? Emotional stress and pain will be having, okay. Financial distress, which comes under the economical aspect or the economical parameter. She is very much anxious. She is very much anxious about the family, about herself, about her children. What are the future, what are the things which they have to face in the future? So regarding that, she is very much anxious about it. So coming to the economical part, what all things will be there? financial distress. She's living in a rented house, yes. So obviously she will be thinking how to pay the rent amount and all, how to arrange the financial thing, how to seek or how to go forward with the education part of their children. So regarding that, she will be having so many economical pain or the financial distress. Then the spiritual part, what will be her mindset regarding the spiritual part? Yes, she will be having less hope. The patient won't be knowing how to carry on things. So she will be having less hope regarding herself as well as with the family things. Okay, next slide. So all the answers which you shared in the chat box is there. So these are the 4 parameters and the pain which the patient had undergone. In the physical part will be physical pain, fatigue will be there, lack of sleep will be there, difficulty in walking. Since her leg has fractured, there will be difficulty in walking, and body image issue will be also there in the physical aspects. Coming to the psychological aspects, of course, the patient will be having an isolation. She is having a lonely feeling. The patient will be emotionally weak. The patient was having anxious, so obviously the anxiety regarding the future will be there. Unclear about her prognosis and palliative care. Distress due to multiple illness. So multiple illness can make her get more stressed. So that is the psychological part. And coming to the socio-economic part, it is a strained relationship with the family. As she is a widow and she is living alone, she doesn't have any relationship with the other members of the family. She's unable to go for job. Her leg is fractured also. She's a CA patient. So there is no breadwinner in the family, and the patient itself cannot be able to go for a job. Financial instability. Since there is no breadwinner, the financial stability will be decreasing. She has to pay the rent of the money. So house rent, low accessibility to hospital, the absence of caregiver and support system. Children are there. Other than that, no one is there in the family. So there is no proper caregiver also in the family. Also, there is no support system. So that comes the socio-economic part. Then the 4th parameter, spiritual, extreme spiritual distress, because she has lost faith in God. She has lost hope. She has loss of connection with the family. So there is no support, which again decreases the meaning and joy of her. Then there is no significant person in life. She can't relay or she can't go and ventilate her problems or pains to no one else. And no memorable or joyful events in the family. To motivate her or to increase her spiritual or the psychological improvement, for the improvement of those 2 parameters, there is no meaningful events that has happened in the past life. So again, that will decrease her hope, also increase the pain of spiritual. So these are the 4 parameters in the 4 pain that the patient has undergone. So the physical aspects can be assessed through the physical scales. The rest of the economic and spiritual assessments can be taken through the psychosocial assessment scales. So here are the some possible social impacts which can be present or which is there commonly in some of the patients. So regarding the social impacts, there will be social isolation. The patient will be having no one to depend on, so that dependency will be there. Financial instability will be there. Lack of social support will be there. Debts will be there. Loss of work. Interpersonal issues can be formed. Also, inadequate facilities. So these are the some of the social impacts which the patient may have during their psychosocial problems. So psychological impact, some of the psychological impacts which the patients may come across are feelings of shock and uncertainty, or hopelessness, anticipatory grief, poor insight. Here on the last case which we have discussed, the patient was having no insight about her diagnosis as well as the prognosis. So again, which will increase her grief, also decreases her insight. Anxiety was there in the patient. So regarding the future, regarding her treatment, regarding her children. So these all factors may again make her so much anxious. Suicidal ideation or wanting to hasten death. So all these psychological factors will increase the suicidal ideations or suicidal thoughts in a patient, which make her end with a psychological disease called depression, or she may go to uh, incidents like, or she may think about having a suicide, or hating her life, thereby will end up in a death. Like that, she may have this kind of thinking process in her. Also, poor coping with the illness. The patient won't be able to cope with the illness in no way. So, psychosocial and spiritual suffering is real but can be difficult to recognize and treat. This can manifest as physical complaints. So, as in the physical pain, these all pain is very hard to identify. It is only through the proper observation and proper communication that the psychosocial part can be assessed and proper interventions can be provided. Vulnerable population. So these are few vulnerable populations which we have come across. Living alone, like the patients who are living alone comes under the vulnerable category. Elderly without support, single parent, multiple patients in family. The family is having more than one patient. Obviously, the family will be having so much psychological distress. Victims of gender issues, like the family or the spouse is undergoing any kind of physical or verbal, psychological or sexual harassment, will be having more vulnerability there. And individuals with mental health issues, other than the physical part, if the patient is having any mental health issues, again that increases the vulnerability of that patient. Then individuals with suicide ideations, if the patient is having a great suicide ideations, it's very hard for the patients to come to their normal drinking pattern, and also it will any negative part may trigger the patients into a negative effect or negative impact. Socially isolated, and if the person feels that I am socially isolated, again psychologically the patient comes or thinks about the suicide feelings, or may end up with psychological other diseases. Substance users in family, most of the family, the breadwinner, there are chances for the breadwinner to be an alcoholic. So again that triggers the whole family to go into a vulnerable situations, uh, which increases the psychosocial issues in the family, and again which will give a negative impact on the patient too. Then individuals in extreme poverty, like lack of food or water or shelter, their financial distress will be increasing, thereby their psychosocial problems will be increasing. Dignity, the inability to acknowledge personhood, the insensitivity of not acknowledging personhood can be psychologically devastating. So this is something which explains about the dignity what we have in our profession and what we have to follow during all assessments that we do. So this is a small picture taken from our IP. This is a patient. He's celebrating his wedding anniversary with his wife. They were cutting the cake and sharing those good moments with each other. And also we were having very happy moments by seeing the patient's happy faces. So yes, and this is some of the vocational rehabilitation that we have provided for some of our patients. If the patient is having or the family is undergoing some financial distress, like how we will move on again with the financial situation, and also for making the patient become independent, we do take assessments needed for that, the psychosocial assessment needed for that, and later on, after proper assessment, we will plan accordingly with the expectations of the patient as well as the family, and thereby we will give the interventions. And through that, we have given some vocational interventions for some of our patients. This is a support which we provide for the children, both education and emotional. We used to give support also for the bereavement family, where we give some financial aids for their education. So these are the photographs that we took for that. Always remember, evaluate our interventions. Again, as I said, assessment is not a single process, it's an ongoing process. Hence, there are chances for the intervention to go into a wrong pattern. So, follow up regularly, then only we can get a proper intervention. So, every time evaluate whether the interventions are getting benefited for the family as well as for the patient. Assess it again and again. If there is a change needed, then rechange it and then properly take the next intervention needed for the patient as well as for the family. Assessment, assess how the patients and families are benefited. Assessments have to be revised and updated. Reach out for help if needed. And through the assessments, if we found that other source of helps are needed for the patients, that is from the society or some other government schemes, reach out for those helps and rechange the intervention part. There is an art and science in psychosocial care, just as in medicine. So with this, I conclude my session. Any doubts? You can raise your queries in the chat box.
Thank you, Neeraja, for the wonderful presentation. Anybody have any doubts on this, please ask. Otherwise, we can move on to the case presentation. Any doubts? So if they don't have any doubts, please, we can move on to the case presentation, because I hope your presentation is clear to everyone and they all understand about the importance of psychosocial assessment and evaluation. So I think we can move on to the case presentation. Mr. Alfonso will be presenting a patient story today.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alfonso Shajan, staff nurse, Alpha Palliative nurse. Case presentation, patient details, age 81, female patient, CA breast, presenting complaints, patient can complaint of severe pain, restless, abnormal distension present, anxiety is present, constipation. Then history of illness, hypertension, diabetic mellitus, nausea, vomiting. Next examination, moderate fluid, pain management, catheterization, PRDR enema given. Next, treatment and significant investigation. First one, chemotherapy, USG done, CT scan done. Then psychosocial aspect, 81-year-old who got married with her elder son, accidentally death after that she was mentally depressed. Then she communicates through telephone. Next point, she fear about her diagnosis and further relapse. Next, she anxious about her pain, bilateral hands, and training sensation. Medications. Tab glimepiride 1 mg BD, tab metropolamin 500 BD, tab atovasis BD, tab telmisartan 40 mg HS, tab pandopo 40 mg OD, tab morphine 10 mg 6 hourly, tab perinom 10 mg TDS, tab tuberculosis 5 mg 2 HS. Main concern. The patient and her family is aware about the disease. Summary. My patient, 81 years old, diagnosed CA breast right, modified radial mastectomy done on 2023. Now, she is treated with Irinalakuda Government Hospital, palliative OPD. Her chief complaint of bilateral pain. And medicines are given for management. Plan for evaluation pain for next visit. Next discussion point. How can we explore psychosocial issues and support to the patient and family?
Thank you, Sister Alfonso, for the wonderful presentation. Anybody need any more clarification regarding this patient story? Please ask her. So, I would like to know about the patient's family details. Was the primary caregiver? That all things I would like to know. Sister Alfonso, please tell us.
Primary care given patient have some mentally depressed patients. Patient son is suddenly an accident, but she was depressed. Then patient mentally depressed. That we can assess the patient and family.
Okay. How many children? Only one son or any other?
No, the only two the sons are there. One son are suddenly accident. Then last one with the supporters, all things. Patient caring, all support with one son, and family with support, all things. Wife.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we can discuss. We have learned about the psychosocial assessment part and the importance. So we will discuss. Please respond. Please suggest something from your side also. So we would like to hear from you all. If you have seen these kind of patients in your settings, how will you help, and how can you explore the psychosocial social issues and support? So please respond your part first, and then we will take. Any suggestions, please? Anybody? She said she is very anxious about her disease, and so there are a lot of psychosocial issues. From that point, we understand that she has some emotional issues, and also she has lost her son recently. So that's because of that she has depressed, and so if these kind of situation, if you have seen, how will you manage, and how will you start to assess what all things you would like to assess? What are the primary thing you would do for this patient? So we have around 21 participants. Please respond something. We need to help Sister Alfonso. She needs to help that patient. So if you have put your maybe give your suggestions, that would be helpful for that patient. So please respond something. Anybody? Sister Hema, are you there? Sister Joshna, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah,
Can you
please.
please repeat
Yeah,
the
please.
question?
So here is a 81-year-old lady has recently diagnosed with CA breast and mastectomy done, and she has lost her son recently. Because of that, due to that, she has uh, depressed, and she is very anxious about her disease. So this is the summary of this patient. So the question is, how can we explore psychosocial issues and support to this patient and family? This was the discussion points, but I would like to hear from you all. So if you have made these kind of patients, how will you manage?
The patient is elderly and she is having a disease, undergoing disease, and also the age-related issues also will be there with the patient. So first we have to like make sure that the patient is supported from every side. She should be given the moral like she is aware of her disease condition or not?
She knows the diagnosis.
Yeah, so it is like very easy when the patient knows the diagnosis. So we have to like make sure like she is supported symptomatically for all the physical things. And in aspect of the psychosocial issues, if the son, the eldest son who is with her, if he is supporting, that is fine. If he is not supporting, she might be getting some elderly pension or something. And other than that, we must encourage her to like visit the like temple or like the social activity, church, wherever they used to like practice their religious activities. And we have to counsel her in such a way that she should indulge with the neighbors and the social workers, volunteers, and we have to try making her feel comfortable in each and every process. So these are the things we can like help her, and also we have to speak with the eldest son what he is going through, and these are the few things we can do.
Thank you, Hema, for the answers. So very good. And Joshna is also put some chat answers. She must be counseled with the help of a psychologist if possible, as there are signs of depression. Definitely, if she is having a signs of depression, definitely we have to include a social officer or a psychologist in that patient care and explore explore her problems, and so that we can able to identify her problems, and we can able to ventilate her problems at least. And also the other thing is she has anxious about her disease conditions. So why she's, we have to identify, we have to that do the proper assessment why she is anxious. So is there any misconception? These kind of things may be inside her mind always, all the time. So you have to sit there and listen to her problems and ventilate her feelings, so that we can able to identify more about the patient psychosocial aspects too. Because from the beginning onwards, I that told you no. So because of, if they have a psychosocial issues there, definitely the physical distress will increase, the severity will increase because of the psychosocial issues. So if they have a psychosocial issues there, we have to address properly, and at least we have to that listen their emotions, and they can able to ventilate their problems, and so that they will get a some sort of mental relief, and at the same time, if there is any need to provide any psychosocial support, any other things, definitely we need to give some kind of support. So I think Neeraja can add more. So, do you want to add anything, Neeraja?
Was telling, and as mentioned in the chat box, first we have to identify like which is the problem area, whether it's within the family or is a financial part which the patient and the family is suffering on. So based on that, after identify the problem area, we can take a detailed assessment, like if it is with the socio-economic thing, how can we meet up the how can we increase the financial aid for the family. And if it is a psychological, if the patient is having a lonely feeling, or if the patient is undergoing any stress, then we can go to the psychological assessments and thereby do the interventions according to the psychological part. And as well as in the financial part, according to the financial need which they if the person is having a feeling that she wanted to work independently, that also can be assessed and provided with the vocational rehab. So the first and foremost thing is, first we have to know which area the patient and the family is suffering, whether the psychological, social, or the spiritual one. Based on that, we can take a proper assessments and then do a proper interventions part. So thank you, Hema and Josna, for your responses. And as Hema said, we can all things which they were saying was right. And also here, Josna was saying that counseling with the psychologist if the patient is having going through any depressive symptoms. So these are the things which we can give a psychological support. And as regarding the pension thing which Hema was telling, this which comes under the financial support aid. So thank you both of you for your responses.
So if they don't have any questions, we can wind up. So as I mentioned earlier, this is one of the most important part in palliative care. So if they have a psychosocial issues there, definitely you have to address well, and if you address the psychosocial issues, definitely they will get a good maybe total care. So we are all focusing on total care. If you don't attend that other parts, only you will focus on physical part. We don't give any palliative care for these patients. We are we are focusing on the total care. So if there is any problem there, you have to address the patient problems, and as much as possible, try to give a total care to the patient and family. Thank you, Neeraja, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, Sister Alfonso, for the case presentation, and thank you others, especially Sister Hema and Sister Joshna, for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Neeraja, for the wonderful presentation, which was very informative. And thank you, Sister Shiba, for the facilitation. Thank you all for participating. Let's see you in the next class. Thank you.